Good afternoon. Welcome to our first CLE workshop. And for those of you who are not still familiar with CLE, it's called the Center for Language Excellence. And I just want to quickly introduce the staff members so that, because you can talk to any of these people if you have any questions about CLE. I'm the Executive Director of CLE, but we also have the Director of Assessment, Maria Shadakova. She's not here, she'll probably join us later, and Director of Online Language Education, Esther Ham. She's at the back there. If you have any questions about online, we're going to be doing a series of workshops, actually as many as you all need. So please, if you have any suggestion for any workshop, somebody just told me and said, I hope you do one on OPI. We're going to be doing one on OPI, but that's oral proficiency interview. So, but if there are if you have suggestions on other workshops that we can do, please feel free to let us know. Xiaojin is also on our staff. That's why she's, running around. And Laura here, Antonia, she's the face of CLE. When none of us is around, she is the one. If you have any question, it's actually better to go to Laura, and then she will send the question to everybody. I just want to quickly have an idea of how many language coordinators are here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, good. And the rest are instructors. Okay. How many of you have done peer evaluation or peer observation? Okay. Does your program have what we call observation instrument that you use? 1, 2, 3. Okay, only 3. Okay, good. The reason I'm asking this is that if you look at the outline that I have for today's workshop, we're going to be talking about, I'll give you the goal of the workshop quickly, then what is the peer? What is peer observation? What is the goal of peer observation? Why peer observation? Then the process. Then what I'm planning to do is I'll show you a video of a language classroom. I already prepared a draft observation instrument or form that I think we can all work on and try to maybe adapt it so that we can make ours. We can make it ours at IU Bloomington. So I'm going to divide you into groups, give you the draft, and then we will work on it, and then hopefully come up with a generic one that we can distribute to all language programs so that if they want to use it, they can use it or even adapt it to their own, language. I think doing this will, hopefully will help us to be able to, see how, other better ways, ways of doing this. So, so my goal really, my goal is for us to be able to come at the end of this workshop to be able to come up with an observation, peer observation, what do they call it? Instrument or form that we can all hopefully try to use. Teaching in general, as we all know, because we are all teachers, is a multi-dimensional job. So there can't be really one single instrument that one can use. So, because there are so many different ways of teaching. But this does not mean that we cannot still evaluate good teaching. It doesn't matter what the person is teaching. If you go into a classroom, even if you don't understand, if I go into a classroom where they are teaching physics, I can tell if this teacher is a good teacher or not. It's just, there are just things that come with good teaching that as teachers we should be able to see when we look into a classroom, or we are in a classroom observing what is going on. So assessing what we do as language teachers requires a multifaceted approach. So peer observation is just one part of a comprehensive evaluation of teaching. And that's what I'm going to be concentrating on today, the peer observation part. Student surveys, also serve as one aspect. But unfortunately, I think there are many programs that just depend on student survey to evaluate their teachers. But you can't just, you can't depend on consumer impressions alone. It's good to be able to see what is really going on in the classroom. So the goals, to learn sound principles of peer evaluation of foreign language teaching and to design an instrument to guide peer observation of language teaching for your program. So what is a peer, or who is a peer? A colleague who does not have administrative authority over you, or the person could be maybe a mentor, or a colleague who shared the same status of, the person could offer each other, to offer the other very useful observation. But I know that in our own case here, most of the language coordinators, you do it maybe with AIs or maybe other lecturers. If you're a senior lecturer, you may be asked to review a lecturer for promotion, which means peer observation could be a high stake. It may depend on what you say can depend on somebody's promotion. Or even with AIs, it could depend on the AI getting funding to continue teaching. So it's kind of really, really important because so to speak, somebody's life could depend on this livelihood. So that's why I think this is, important for us to be able to say, here's an example of where a peer, an evaluation is going on in the class. So what do you see? Okay, so lots of universities are actually doing this now. So it's a process where university instructors offer feedback to colleagues on their efforts and practices. It complements, students' evaluation, definitely. And then the process might include review of course curriculum, syllabus, materials, learning assessment, and also in class, which is the whole point of this one. I've been on a tenure review committee. When I was in Wisconsin, I was on a tenure review committee, and I've also even chaired, to evaluation, of professors coming up for tenure, and it still doesn't cease to amaze me how much sometimes we professors depend on student evaluation to evaluate, professors. And when you read some of the things, students are saying, you will be shocked, really, about professors, you will wonder, do they just write this depending on which side of the bed they wake up from, sometimes it will have nothing to do even with what is going on in the classroom. So that's why we need to be able to support one another, as language teachers, to know how this is done so that we can do a good job for one another when it comes to review. And then, if we have to compare it with what students are saying, that means we have another point of evaluation. So what is the goal of peer observation? Like I said, it could be for assessment or evaluation. When we talk about assessment in this context, we are talking about formative, that is to improve. Somebody could, I could go to a colleague and say, by the way, I'm struggling with this aspect of my teaching. Can you come to my class and just, observe me and see how I'm doing it? We could do that just to help me to improve. And that's usually called, assessment in terms of peer observation. But evaluation, it's the summative one, where it depends on your judging the value of the person's performance. And it can result in promotion or maybe no merit. I've had cases where, in medicine, where every year we will rate one another based on research, teaching, and service. And sometimes you can rate somebody from 1 to 10, you can give somebody 2 because of teaching, which means the merit, because in medicine we get raised based on merit. They call it merit-based. Somebody can get so low on teaching if the evaluation is really bad, peer evaluation, and also even students' evaluation, and all the things that people look at. So in lots of cases, it can really, amount to dollars when we really think about it. So the summative one is like the final. The key is that formative evaluation has to have been happening to be able to result to summative. A formative has to have been going on. Formative is the one that you do, not just wait until the person is facing promotion or a decision to be made on whether the person is going to be rehired or not to do it. But the point of this is that formative one assessment has to have been going on. And that's, so peer observation, peer review of teaching can function, can play both roles, either to help your colleague improve or to help in making a decision about whether they can continue to be hired or not. So, but it's good to know how both should be done, because they can be different. So formative is the process of objectively understanding the state or condition of a thing by observation and measurement. It means taking a measure of its effectiveness. The measurement is for the purpose of improving it. But the summative one, which is called evaluation, it brings value, judgment. It's process of observing and measuring a thing for the purpose of judging it and determining its value, either by comparing it to similar things or to a standard. It means passing judgment on it as part of an administrative process. Maybe we all do both, as our language coordinators. Summative assessment is only valid as part of a larger process that includes clearly established criteria and systematic formative measures, which is basically saying don't do summative if you have not been doing formative. It would be unfair to a colleague or to a teacher if you just go in one time and then determine her future or his future based on your one-time visit. That would be so administratively unfair to that candidate. In order for peer observation for formative purposes to be effective, it must respond to the concerns and self-perceived need of the instructor who requested. It must also be done by someone who the instructor trusts. It's possible for people to go into somebody's class, maybe because of the way they want to call the person down, That's where it's kind of, tricky. So we have to also bear in mind the political, situation in the department. But hopefully, those of us who will be doing it will have the best interest of the person we are reviewing in mind. So what's the process? It's always good to collect information about the class, about the course, before you go to the classroom. Don't just go, or you even just show up without telling the person you are coming, or you just write an email, I'm coming to visit your class. You have no idea where the person is in her syllabus or his syllabus. You don't know exactly what the person will be doing that day. You don't know what they've done before, and you don't know, it's like, what are you going to be judging? What are you going to be observing? So the first rule is you have to get the information, lesson plan, syllabus, handout, what is that person using in class? Understand what is going on in the class before you even plan going. Then rule number 2, there has to be a pre-observation meeting between you and the person. That's very critical. Because during this meeting, You know, if you just, the meeting actually has to happen face to face, not just few minutes before you go into the person's classroom. Oh, what do you want me to say, or something like that. It has to at least one day, you know, because then the person can tell you what he's going to be doing, and you know what he will be doing falls into the overall picture of the course. The observation with the observer taking notes, you know, that's why the design, if your department already has it, it will be good even maybe to share it with you know, all of us. It's always good. It's good to go with a checklist, which can be observation instrument, aside from taking notes. And the notes, as we're going to be talking about, it should be an anthropological, you know, like an anthropologist or ethnographer, just observing and taking notes of what is going on. What is the instructor doing? What are the students doing? Not with your own preconceived, you know, notion of what the class should be, you know. So, and you could even write a question as you are taking the notes. Maybe the teacher did something that you're not sure of. You can write, why did he do that? So that when you have the post-visit meeting, you can ask, and then the person can tell you. So, taking notes, making sure you just record what is happening, whether positive or negative, without judging yet, because you don't know yet. Reflections by both the observer and the observee. Right after the class, the instructor should also have a self-reflection. What have I done? How did I do it? What worked well? What did not work well? The instructor, that's what we call self-reflective teaching. You should be able to reflect on what you have done. And then also, the observer, after having observed, should also be able to think about, what did I see based on the design, what really happened, and then use the design to be able to kind of, you know, help when the face-to-face meeting happens again. So the reflections should be on the side of both. Then second, there should be a second face-to-face meeting. After the visit, you've got to go back and meet with the instructor, you know, to be able to share what you saw, and then allow the instructor to tell you what he did from his or her own perspective. So that second, you know, face-to-face meeting also has to happen to make this process really fair, you know, to the instructor. Then written assignment could be optional. It could be depending on what you want to use it for. If, you know, I've had cases where, you know, TAs will say, can you write it for me? And I want to put it in a dossier. And some of them have used it for a job. I got my first job right after my graduation at Yale University, having taught as a TA in my school in linguistics for 4 years. And all my evaluation, I kept them. So when I was applying for my job, I sent my evaluation to the instructor, to the you know, as part of my package for applying for the position. That because that was my teaching experience, and they really wanted me, you know, also, you know, for teaching, and it was amazing the impact that it had. So even for our AIs, it may be good for them to have it, you know, in their dossier, because you never know, you know, how it's going to help them. So, but you can, you know, the instructor can tell you whether they want a written one or not. So basically, what I just told you is what I put in the diagram, just one after the other. So the guidelines, meet with the instructor of the class at least a day before, because this creates a context for the class to be observed. Look at the instructor's syllabus, take the time to agree, give him or her the instrument you're going to be using. I think it's important. Don't just go there without him knowing what you're going to be, you know, observing him on. We're just, I'm currently the president of National Federation of Modern Language Teachers Association. How many of you know about this association? You know about it? Good. NFMLTA. Most people don't know. This is the organization that is in charge of MLJ. MLJ is one of the top language journals, really, in the nation. We are in the process of reviewing the editor. The editor is a big thing, a person in this organization. When we hire somebody to put the instrument together, because they've never really done it. So it was just during our own board that we decided we need to evaluate her. The first thing she said, she told me, she wrote me, she said, Antonia, I want to know what I'm going to be evaluated on. And I thought, that's fair. It's the same thing with when we go to, evaluate our colleagues' classroom. So we sent her the instrument that we developed to judge her performance. And she was really happy. So I think it's a fair thing to do. So then time to this, and the type of feedback, then during the meeting, the pre-observation meeting, the instructor, you and the instructor can talk about what kind of feedback he would like. Or if it is something the department is asking you to do, then both of you will be at the, you will be at the same level. The instructor needs to be able to explain what will happen in class. During that meeting, he will tell you what he's going to be doing. Observer needs to understand the instructor's expectations for what will happen in the class. Then the instructor needs to tell the observer the kinds of things to focus on, maybe reaching performance objectives, use of target language, providing comprehensible input, learner-centered approach. These are issues about foreign language teaching, which I think should be in our instrument that we're going to be using, because we are talking about good language teaching. And the instrument we're going to be using should have what we call strategies for effective foreign language teaching. So arrive early, sit in a place that does not attract attention, observe what is going on in the class based on the observation instrument. Take notes as an ethnographer, that is don't just go and just start furiously writing everything you think goes wrong. Just record basically what is good, what you have seen. Then identify points to discuss with the instructor, include things that went well and suggest and give suggestions for change. Observing reflects on what took place in the class from his or her perspective. Feedback, either in writing, depending on what your program wants. Videotaping. Videotaping could be very effective because it's hard for somebody to deny when you're looking at what you've done. It's possible for us to do something and say, oh no, I didn't do that. But videotaping can actually help you to be able to see what you've done. And it can also, it could also be used, you can show it, especially if it's an exemplary, teaching. It can also be used as a sample for others in the department. And I think people should, departments should have that, language departments should have that. And I'm hoping that CLE will even, hopefully maybe, get to say where we can come. If you feel you want to really document your teaching that we could be using as a model, I think CLE will be willing to come to your class to do that. Videotape is an excellent record of certain teaching techniques that are difficult to capture on paper and can be as part of your portfolio. When Artful always selects the teacher of the year, and one of the things they have to get is a videotape of the classroom of the people that are selected, because they really want to see, and the committee that are selecting, since they can't travel to everybody's class, they want to see a video. So if you have something like that, it really can be a powerful evidence of what is going on in your class. Also, sometimes a peer observer, an instructor could say, maybe I want you to interview my students also, aside from, you're just coming to class. But that could be a decision that an instructor could make. What I'm going to do now is the handout that you have. I want us to kind of, form a group of 4, please, a group of 4. And the handout that you have has a draft that I put together. I put a draft together of kind of like instrument that we can use. I'm going to play a videotape of a language program for you, of a language session. And as you are watching this video, I want you to be evaluating it. Even though we haven't, really asked, we haven't really asked the person, what did you do, all those. But even just looking at what is going on in the video, I want you to use the draft, and if there is any feature in this draft, that any feature of that you think should have been in this draft that is not there, you can add it and say, oh, we should have put this there to be able to find out also what is going on. So this is just a draft, but I want you to look at it based on what we're going to be looking at, and do a kind of evaluation, and then we will discuss. What we will do, please make sure you form the group, then we will discuss and see if you think this draft is good enough, or suggest how we can improve on it to kind of use it as a sample.
Can we read through it, the rubrics first?
Before, thank you, okay, no problem. I'll give you about 5 minutes. Okay, do you have any questions about the draft before we move on? Thank you, Annie. Any questions?
Well, we were actually discussing the difference between the two items on checking understanding. One uses activities in class to determine whether students understand course materials, and the other one is instructor use comprehensible input strategies and check students' understanding. Is that?
Good, yeah. Good question. It's on the other side, right?
Yeah, the first side. Yeah.
The first?
The first side.
Oh,
yeah.
I don't even get what the first side.
Okay.
Too many.
Where is the first one?
Number 5 and
number 5.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Instructor uses activities in class to determine whether students understand course material. Then number 8, instructor uses comprehensible input strategies and checks students' understanding. Okay, let me first of all address number 8. How many of you are familiar with comprehensible input strategies? The French? Okay, good. It's very critical. When we talk about, I'm going to be doing workshops on all these later, on what we call, there are 5 strategies of good, effective foreign language teaching that I put here. Okay, one of them is being able to use comprehensible input. Krashen proposed input plus 1. That is when it's linked to using target language. You go to many foreign language classes, they are using English, translating. That's not foreign language. That's done in linguistics. That's a linguistic analysis. Or they are doing grammar, they are, translating. That's not foreign language learning. Or they are talking about culture. They're, talking. Today, let's talk about culture, marriage in Yoruba land, and it's in English. That's what anthropologists do. That's social science. That's not foreign language learning. So what this theory of comprehensible input and input plus 1 is saying, you have to stick with the target language, but speak the language at the level that your students will constantly understand, and use strategies, comprehensible input strategies like gesture. For example, if I want to say something about somebody, I'm teaching adjectives. I want to say tall, short, I'm using gesture. That's a comprehensible input strategy. Or let me just give you, you're going to really get it. I said, tele Obama, this is Yoruba. Tele Obama ń gbé ní Chicago, ṣùgbọ́n nísinsìnyí Obama ń gbé ní Washington DC. What is nísinsìnyí? Did you get? You see, my gesture. And this one, before, used to. So gestures, pictures, realias, those are that really go with what you are saying. Those are comprehensible input strategies. Anything that you can use to help your learners without you switching into English, that will help them to be able to follow. So that's what we mean. And you are constant, you see, I'm checking her understanding now because she's doing this. You check your students' understanding by looking at their facial expression. If they frown their face, you know they are not getting it. You feel that they are struggling. You know, don't just say, do you understand? Because they will say yes, you know. Then, now the number 5 is saying give them activities, like role play, you know, tasks that will help you to know that you understand. So the comprehensible input is when you are presenting, sticking to the language, don't switch into English, but don't speak above their level. And give them all the, you know, everything that they can use. You know, if I want to say, I like to dance, and I do this, you know, you know. So it's so good for you to know what comprehensible input is. I have a video that I can also show you that really powerfully demonstrates the different kinds of comprehensible input strategies that you can use in your classroom. Okay. Any other questions? Do you have anything that you would like to add to this? Those of you who have been doing observation in your program, is there anything that you think I'm missing here that could be there? Okay, let's look at this video now. This is a Swahili demo.
Antonia?
Yes.
I might suggest something about classroom arrangement.
Kind of like environment.
Well, a semicircle,
Yes.
something that's very easy to observe the minute you walk into class.
Okay.
Are students in rows, or are classes arranged in such a
Okay.
way that they
Okay.
can interact easily?
We'll put that there. Thank you. Yeah, that's good. Yeah, please think about it. Even if you can right now, but if it comes later, let me know. We will add it, because I really want us to have something that can benefit all of our language programs. So hopefully, you know, we can send it out and people can use and modify as they like.
I would like to add one comment. So often when we have classroom observers, it's always good that I inform my students that, you know, we're going to have a visitor who's going to observe, because students don't know often if they are being observed or the instructor is being observed, and that makes them nervous.
Actually, it's in the guidelines. Yeah, I have these 2 guidelines that is here. It talks about that. It talks about what the observer should do, and it talks about what you should do as an instructor, and that's a good point. It's one of the points raised, that you have to you should inform your students.
Welcome to the Star Talk Classroom Video Collection. As a teaching assistant at the University of Wisconsin at Madison, Zablon Ngonja participated in the Star Talk Teacher Training Program offered by the National Council of Less Commonly Taught Languages. Zablon illustrates how consistent use of the target language creates an immersion experience for his students. In this lesson, Zablon is teaching a first semester Swahili class that has been meeting for 9 weeks. Notice how the new vocabulary is introduced in a meaningful context that allows for the integration of language and culture. Students are challenged to apply the new learning immediately as they participate in role-playing activities. See how creative the students are while working with the new vocabulary and structures. Notice how Zablon uses classroom routine to create a sense of community, and how he scaffolds the language learning experience so that all students feel successful. At the end of this lesson, students will be able to use appropriate greetings in the marketplace, buy and sell food items in the market, and negotiate prices in the marketplace in Swahili.
Hamjambo? Hatujambo, shikamoo mwalimu. Marhaba, habari za asubuhi? Nzuri sana. Nzuri, lakini nimechoka kidogo. Asante. Habari za nyumbani? Nzuri sana. Haya basi salimianeni wawili wawili, hujambo, sijambo, habari za nyumbani? Salimia jirani yako.
Nzuri sana. Nzuri sana. Habari za masomo?
Vizuri. Asanteni. Sasa tutaimba lo bahati, sawa? Vizuri. Haya, simameni. Mtu mmoja mwenye shamba, 1, 2, 3. Mtu mmoja mwenye shamba alipanda viazi, akachimba akapata lo almasi. Lo bahati kwa mtu mwenye shamba. Lo bahati kwa mtu mwenye shamba. Akarusha jembe chini, akaenda mjini, kanunua motoka, sasa ni tajiri. Lo bahati kwa mtu mwenye shamba. Lo bahati kwa mtu mwenye shamba. Vizuri basi, pasheni, pasha piga. Haya kaeni. Leo tutasoma kununua vitu sokoni. Kununua vitu sokoni. Nini? Kununua vitu sokoni. Sokoni ni nini? Market. Vizuri, ndio. Mpasheni, pasha. Piga. Sawa. Kwa hivyo tunanunua vitu sokoni. Limao. Malimao. Vizuri. Malimao. Chungwa. Machungwa. Tufaa. Matufaa. Vizuri, matufaa. Mahindi. Matufa. Malimao. Embe. Maembe. Mimi ninapenda sana maembe. Peasi. 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 Mapeasi. 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 Vizuri. Sawa. Hivyo tuna chungwa, limao, mapeasi. Nini? Mahindi.
Machungwa.
Matufaa.
Maembe.
Maembe. Malimao. Vizuri. Umeona? Pesa. Shilingi 100. Shilingi 100. Sawa? Shilingi ngapi? Shilingi 100. Kwa hivyo 100, 200, 300, 400, 100, 100, 600, 700, 800, 900, 1,000. Aha. Vizuri. Kwa hivyo shilingi 100, shilingi 200, shilingi 300, 400, 500, 600, 700, 800, 900, 1,000. Vizuri. Sawa. Basi sasa nakwenda sokoni. Hujambo. Sijambo. Habari gani? Nzuri sana. Machungwa shilingi ngapi? Shilingi 250. Shilingi 250. Mimi nina shilingi 200 tu. Basi chukua. Haya, basi chukua. Asante. Kwa heri. Vizuri. Maembe shilingi ngapi? Maembe shilingi 400. Maembe shilingi 400. Mimi nina shilingi 300 tu. Basi sawa, chukua. Asante. Shilingi 300. Asante. Kwa heri. Limao shilingi ngapi? Shilingi 150. Shilingi 150. Shilingi 150. Mimi nina shilingi 100 tu. Sawa. Basi chukua. Shilingi 100. Asante. Sawa? Vizuri. Hujambo? Wote semeni hujambo? Hujambo? Sijambo. Habari gani? Nzuri sana. Machungwa shilingi ngapi? Shilingi 250. Shilingi 250. Mimi nina shilingi 200 tu. Mimi nina shilingi 200 tu. Basi chukua.
Basi chukua.
Basi chukua.
Basi chukua.
Asante.
Asante.
Asante. Kwaheri.
Kwaheri.
Vizuri. Sawa. Sawa. Kwa hivyo ninyi wawili na pesa zenu. Haya. Inasemaje? Na pesa. Asante kushukuru. Zungumzeni wawili sasa. Alafu na ninyi.
Sijambo.
Habari gani?
Nzuri sana. Habari za kazi?
Nzuri sana. Habari
Nzuri sana.
Urusaikonemani.
nzuri sana. Asante.
Mapiazi shilingi ngapi?
Shilingi 300.
Shilingi 300.
Asante.
Asante. Kwaheri. Machunga shilingi ngapi?
Shilingi 250.
Mimi nina shilingi 200 tu.
Nani wataanza hapa? Hujambo? Aha.
Shikamoo baby.
Marahaba, hujambo?
Sijambo.
Habari gani?
Nzuri sana na wewe je?
Nzuri sana.
Maembe shilingi ngapi?
Maembe, shilingi 500.
Mimi nina shilingi 300 tu.
Oh. Basi chukua. Chukua basi. Basi chukua.
Asante.
Asante kushukuru. Kwaheri.
Aha, vizuri. Haya, pasheni, pasha piga. Wengine. Aha, asante. Wengine.
Hamjambo.
Hatujambo.
Habari gani?
Nzuri sana. Na wewe je?
Nzuri sana. Machungwa shilingi ngapi?
Shilingi 1,000.
Mimi nina shilingi 300.
Pole, tutuonana.
Kwaheri.
Pole. Basi. Vizuri. Aya, asanteni. Hayo pasheni, pasha piga. Wengine.
Jambo.
Sijambo, habari gani?
Nzuri sana na wewe je?
Nzuri sana. Familia hawajambo?
Wow, jambo. Machungwa shilingi ngapi?
Shilingi 250.
Mimi nina shilingi 200 tu.
Hapana. Una shilingi 500. Tatu.
Ndio. Asante.
Haya, vizuri, pasheni, pasha piga. Vizuri. Haya. Ni nini? Embe. Maembe. Vizuri. Chungwa. Machungwa. Malimao. Vizuri. Vizuri, peasi. Mapeasi. Vizuri. Tufaa. Vizuri na matufaa. Vizuri na
Embe. Maembe.
Vizuri. Mahindi. Sawa. Vizuri, basi pasheni, pasha piga. Tumemaliza. Asanteni. Tutasimama tuimbe saa imekwisha ya kujifundisha, sasa twaenda zetu nyumbani. Sawa? Vizuri. Haya, simameni. Simameni. Saa imekwisha ya kujifundisha, sasa twaenda zetu nyumbani. Kwa heri mwalimu, Mungu akipenda tutaonana kesho. 1, 2, 3. Saa imekwisha ya kujifundisha, sasa twaenda zetu nyumbani. Kwa heri mwalimu, Mungu akipenda tutaonana kesho. Vizuri. Asanteni.
We hope that your time with Zablon and his class was useful. For more on what you have seen, examine the materials provided on the Star Talk website.
Okay, let's quickly go over the, for those of you who were doing it, so let's assume we are evaluating a class like this. What would you say? Instructor clearly communicates the performance objectives of class session to the learners. Did you observe that? How many did you observe?
I don't know.
I think so.
I didn't understand when he said it.
How did you think he did it? How did he do it?
What was on the whiteboard was part of it.
That's right. That's
But
right.
that's just a bunch of Swahili though. I mean, so how does that tell them what the objective is?
Okay, good. How? How did he tell them the objective, aside from writing the objective on the board? And he did it in Swahili. Remember, this is first semester. Because many times we think we can only use target language for advanced level, but this is showing that we can use it for even elementary level. So aside from writing the objective, he wrote
He
the
used
objective.
the pictures also, the pictures at the
Pictures.
beginning where he showed the
Pic-
marketplace, the
That's
marketplace, the marketplace, the
That's right.
marketplace.
That's right. He repeated the marketplace many times. So he gave them the context by the pictures, that this is about market, and this is about buying and selling. And then he also, brought out the fruits. So he doesn't need to tell them, today we're going to buy fruits. Because, the pictures are there, right there. So, and that's a critical issue we need to be able to observe in the class, because if the students don't know where they are going, how would you be able to get them there? So we should be able to evaluate an instructor based on whether they make their performance objective clear or not from the beginning, because it puts everything into perspective and into context. Okay. Instructor uses the target language 90% of the time.
Yeah.
Almost 100%, really. Yeah.
100.
Instructor presents class activities and tasks that target one or two modes of communication. You have to be familiar with standards to be able to get this. So which mode of communication did he concentrate on in this lesson?
Presentational.
Huh?
Presentational.
Is this presentational?
Well, I think so.
Why did you say it's presentational?
Well, I was thinking the student ending is coming out, coming in front of the class and then.
But when they came, what were they doing?
Person.
Interpersonal, exactly. They were talking to one another. Presentational is when you are the only one talking and you just present, like a lecture. That's presentational. But when two people are dialoguing back and forth, that's interpersonal communication. Yes.
They weren't really were they really dialoguing or just doing a practice dialogue they memorized?
Okay, that's a good
They
question.
really weren't taking the words they learned and putting it in a new order and way. They were just reading what they memorized on the board, right?
Is that what is going on?
I think he did a good job of the drills, and like I think singular, plural. I think to me it seemed one, and two, and so and then he did a good job of drills, and then
A couple of the, I mean, I would
That's
say,
a
I
good
would,
question.
I would agree mostly that it's repetitional, it's using formula, but I think one of the interesting things was that the second and third dialogue that were presented had slightly different outcomes.
That's right,
And
that's
the
right.
students were able to
That's-
take it in other directions.
Exactly,
So there was some new language use happening there, I
Exactly.
can guess.
exactly. He didn't tell them to push people away when they
Right.
offer a prize that they didn't like. He didn't. They made that up on their own. And also, you know, he didn't teach numbers, or he'd already taught that. So building also on past things that they've learned before. Because using 100 shilling, you know, 300 shillings, you know, shillings, those were what they've known before. What he was trying to concentrate on was just about fruits, for them to be able to buy fruit. So they were still, you know, really making use of previous knowledge and putting it together. But your question is I really like your question, because this is where people try to confuse communicative approach with audiolingual approach. Clearly, this is a case of communicative approach. In the sense that, you see, but communicative approach doesn't mean you cannot teach your students dialogue. You have to learn it. You have to begin somewhere, because these are beginners. So, but the difference between audiolingual and communicative approach is the way they varied it on their own. There was, the funniest was when somebody asked for a prize of something, and then she gave it to him, and then she said, oh, I only have 200 shillings. He said, no, I saw 400 shillings. He said, I saw 400 shillings, and then took the 400 shillings. He didn't teach them that. So, but what we don't call this, I think this is where you need to pay attention. We don't call this proficiency task. It's a performance task. Performance is different from proficiency. You know, you can't expect proficiency from just one lesson. It has to be a performance task. Performance task, they were performing a task. The task is, you know, I'm giving you this money, go buy this fruit. That's a performance. But proficiency is usually what you do at the end of the semester, or maybe even at the end of the, you know, program. You don't do proficiency at the end of a lesson. You do performance. But performance task is different from regurgitated, you know, or memorized forms. Do you see the difference? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's not just ordinarily, they have to memorize something. You have to teach them, you have to give them a context, you have to give them, you know, a model. But then the question is, can they, you know, now take the model and try to personalize it? You know, if I tell my students my name, where I'm from, where I now live, and then I ask them, okay, now it's your turn, tell me where you live. Even though the structure they will be using may still be close to mine, but they're not going to say, I'm from Nigeria. They'll probably say, I'm from Ohio, or I'm from Chicago, you know? So they're still personalizing the model that I've given them. But at the beginning, you have to give them models, which we didn't do during audiolingual, you know, teaching. So but that's a good question, because people always ask that. And people say, well, they're just kind of regurgitating the same model. Of course, because they are, you know, first year level, but the fact is, they are still performing a task. And that's your goal. You want your students to leave your class every day performing one task or the other that is socio-culturally based, that is appropriate to the culture that you are teaching. And if you achieve that on a daily basis, then you are building gradually. You know, then they can say more the following day, and another, and another. Before you know it, you know, they are saying a lot. Okay. Any other? So, yes.
One observation was that he didn't have to say it, but it came through. And that is the culture of buying and selling in that context. That bargaining is a must. Now you don't have to stand, and he didn't have to stand in front of them and tell them bargaining is a must. But they went, and I have only 200 shillings, but this costs 300. Well, okay, take it anyway.
So he was teaching them even the culture of bargaining in Swahili culture. So that right there, you see the incorporation, the connection between language and culture. Okay. Instructor has facilitated, also for number 3, we said he was using interpersonal. Actually, I wanted to say interpersonal, not personal, interpersonal. Then instructor has facilitated learner-centered classroom. Yes, definitely. Instructor, this is not a teacher talk class, because he was engaging the student all the time. Instructor uses activities in class to determine whether students understand course material. Would you say yes to that?
Performance at the end.
That's right, their performance at the end. Instructor fosters student-to-student interaction. Yes. Instructor links new material to previously learned concepts.
Numbers.
Exactly. Instructor uses comprehensible input strategies and checks students' understanding. What are the comprehensible input strategies that he used? Pictures, gestures, objects like money, real shillingi from Tanzania. So those are really, he didn't have to say, this money is from Tanzania. It's already there. It's shillingi, and it's different from shilling in Britain. Okay. Instructor uses appropriate, authentic materials. Yes. Students are comfortable asking questions. That is, the affective domain is low. Do you know what I mean by affective domain? Affective domain is like, the classroom tension. Language learning is not easy at all. And if you don't organize your class in a way where your students can feel relaxed, they can laugh at their own mistakes, they are not tense. You see how they are coming to the front to perform without feeling inhibited. If your class is tense, then we say that the affective domain is high. Tension, there is tension. They are afraid to talk. They're afraid to make mistakes. You want a classroom where your students will not be afraid to make mistakes. The moment they come to your classroom, they just pull down the guard. One of the reasons why they say languages are difficult for adults is because adults are scared of making mistakes. They're not like children. But we want to make our classroom the atmosphere to be so relaxed. That's what affective domain means. To be so relaxed that they laugh, they sing, so conducive to learning. So it's a theoretical term. Affective domain being high or being low. If the affective domain in your class is high, then that will impede learning because they will be so scared to even try. And you can't learn a language if you're not ready to try. Even make a fool of yourself. So, okay. Students actively participate in class activities and performance tasks. Instructor engages students in tasks that incorporate language, culture, and content. Instructor presents the language in an appropriate socio-cultural context. This is also something I think we may want to do a workshop in. Sometimes it's very easy for those of us who teach languages to teach out of context. The dialogue will be perfect grammatically. No mistake, nothing. But what we are trying to tell them to do, it's never done in the culture. Maybe we are importing it from a European, especially African languages or South Asian languages or what we call the less commonly taught languages, because many of us have learned French or English or German, or then when we are teaching a language, we try. I did that when I first started my teaching Yoruba. I remember teaching, introducing yourself in Yoruba. I would say, my name is, Yetunde. Yetunde is my Nigerian name. I actually taught this at Yale, because I started teaching Yoruba at Yale University. I had a lesson on introducing yourself. My name is Yetunde. What is your name? Perfect Yoruba. It was later it dawned on me, Yorubas don't introduce themselves. Where did I get that? And I got my students all introducing themselves. I had to stop myself. I said, what are you doing to your language? We never introduce ourselves because Yorubas don't go to somebody and say, what is your name? It's very rude. But because I wanted to teach the structure, what is your name? But I was teaching it out of the social cultural context of my language. And this is something we need to be very conscious of because it's very easy to do it. And then people will say, how do Yorubas know names? I have uncles that I never knew their first name. And I grew up with them because names are something you just don't go and find out. That's why in our culture, in Yoruba culture, we don't have a word for uncle. Uncle is older father or younger father. So we just call this man our father. All through our growing up, it was when I was an adult that I got to, later find out his, and that's very common, right? You don't just walk up to somebody. This actually happened. I have to tell you this to show you how true this is. I was going for a conference in Maryland one time, and I met this Yoruba woman at the airport. We happened to be going to the same conference. I didn't know her. I just saw her at the airport. We were waiting to board another plane. And I realized, okay, she has to be an African, so then I greeted her, she greeted me, and then we boarded the plane. And when we boarded, she coincidentally was sitting in front of me. So then we continued our conversation, and I said, oh, where do you live in the US? Oh, I live at Tulane. What do you do? I'm at the University of Tulane University. What do you do? Oh, I'm a PhD student in linguistics. I'm actually working. We've been talking for about an hour before we boarded the plane. We've been talking about so many things. So we just continued the conversation when we got to the plane. Then she said, oh, I'm writing I'm a PhD student in linguistics. I'm actually writing my dissertation on Yoruba phonology. And one professor from MSU actually just recommended one professor, Antonia Schleicher, to me to talk, and I've written her, but I haven't heard from her. And then I said, I am Antonia Schleicher. She did this. She just swung back. She was that shows all along we've been talking. She did not know my name. And she was actually telling me about an Antonia Schleicher, because she first of all, thought Antonia Schleicher was a European or a white person. So when she found that, she was like, whoa! Then I said, wow, this is amazing. Because normally, most cases, people will have said something about their names. But we were talking for almost 1 hour. And we could have probably even left without necessarily asking. If I wanted to know her name, I would have waited till the conference and then asked somebody who I know knows her to give me her name. But I would not go to her directly from a Yoruba culture point of view. So we have to watch her when we are teaching our languages to make sure we don't the structure could be grammatically correct, everything may be true. We still have to ask the question, is this a function that people in your culture will perform? If it is not a culture that they do perform, then don't teach it. Because then they will be using the language out of context. My daughter went to Nigeria with me for the first time when she was 3 years old. So a typical American girl will see an old man. What is his name? I will say Baba, father. Then she saw another older man. What is his name? Baba. Another one. What is his name? Baba. He said, is every man Baba in this place? She was so shocked because I didn't want her to go and start mentioning these old people's, name. They would say, didn't you train your daughter? So it's like name is something you don't just go and start, asking for somebody's name. So that it was a big, lesson for me. So always make sure that you put the functions that you are teaching in an appropriate socio-cultural context. Instructor uses a variety of activities to ensure all students are engaged. Observed or not observed? Okay. Instructor engages students in tasks that lead to real performance in the culture.
Yeah.
Yes. The assessment of learning outcome matches the performance objectives of the lesson. Is that true?
Seems, yeah, because to me it seems that the objective was to shop and bargaining.
That's right. That's right. And that was what he tested. The final role play was based on that. It matches exactly what he told them, because he said in Swahili at the beginning, we're going to go to market and buy fruits. Buy fruits. The performance objective is achieved because students are able to do what the instructor stated as the performance objective of the lesson. Did he achieve his goal? He did. So what grade would you give this instructor?
Oh.
Definitely. I mean, this is an example. This video goes all over the nation now, and people are usually really amazed at how well it was done. Yes.
Is this video available online?
It is. Yes. It's actually on my PowerPoint, and the PowerPoint will be online, available to all of you. It's available. They even have example in Hindi, in different languages, in Arabic. Yeah. So I will give you, yes.
There must have been something done earlier. The classroom knew exactly, like, they danced together, kind of. The classroom, they had their notebooks, every single one. I can't get my students to write down anything, and then and they were consulting their notebooks as they were doing things. They all had notebooks, they all knew when to get up, when to sit, what to do. So, yeah, so there was a lot of stuff done before.
Yeah.
No, actually, I trained this guy. He was my graduate student in medicine. Did not know about teaching before he came. As an FLTA, he was my FLTA for Swahili in our department. And basically, when StarTalk asked, what happened was I did a workshop, and they sent observers to come and watch. One day, they came and observed our workshop. And then they recommended to StarTalk that, this workshop is really, a good get her to videotape the teaching of one of the participants. He was a participant at my workshop. So basically all he did was he brought his students. I just told him, we're going to be videotaping you, get them ready. They are real students. These are his students.
Right.
His regular students.
Right.
So he just brought them, and then because he's been practicing this, he's been using this method of communicative approach, using all these strategies of effective foreign language teaching that we taught at the workshop. That was what he was using in his class. So the students were, know English, always, every day. That's how he taught them. So it was just like a natural thing for him to do. Yes.
Was the singing at the beginning something he does as an opener and a closer every day?
Yes.
Okay, and
yes.
this rubbing hands and clap,
yeah.
Is this a culturally specific thing?
Yeah, you see, so I get
Yeah.
To congratulate somebody for doing something good.
Good, yeah, from kindergarten upwards. Yeah, when somebody, you can either simply say it, yeah, Safi, with enthusiasm, or teach them how to express that, with action.
So what appeared to be, gee, how come they all do this song? How come they all got up? Is because they've been doing it every day.
Exactly.
It's part of it. It's part of it.
Exactly. They've been doing it every class.
It's the same song that they do it every class?
Different songs.
Different songs.
Swahili is actually, and I think all languages could do it. When they teach them alphabet, they have songs to go with alphabets. When they teach them even how are you, jambo, si jambo, they have songs. It's just, and I think we could create that. Sometimes we create. The teachers create these songs also as a mnemonic device. Yeah, they will just create it to help them to remember.
So is that song related to the content of this lesson, or it's just a song?
The last one was basically saying goodbye. We finished. So that one is usually probably what they will do as a goodbye song. Yeah.
I think the lesson or the class overall was planned very, very good because one thing that I find a challenge is often is to have students focus for the entire time.
Yeah.
This class did a very good job, this instructor, and students were enjoying it. So I think really it's a very crucial thing to have students' attention throughout the time.
I think the key is for you to ask yourself, how can I make my class more student-centered? There are ways that you can do it. By just getting them involved from day one. He doesn't have to even spend a time to ask them, don't use your cellular phone. They are engaged, throughout. And it's because of all the different ways he engages them. Yeah. But it's possible. It's possible to be able to do that. Because he was just a graduate student when he did. He wasn't even a full-time lecturer or a professor.
Another question, or maybe it can be included in the observation list, or maybe it's already related to part of it, might be timing and pace. Like how much time you put on each different modes, or how much time you put on presentation, how much time you put on student interaction, and that kind of thing can be, and how fast you go, that might be something we need to observe too.
Is that really possible? What do you think about that?
That might make the thing a little mechanical.
Also.
And you might miss the point you want to deliver.
That's right.
Because you are now timed and I have to finish this and this. Well, if you do that without following, you are the leader without the followers. So you want to go with them. If you find that this function, they need more time, you let them have that. It's their class.
Exactly.
It's their class. Exactly. Student-centered means just that.
You let the student decide. When he did there is what we called, I could do that also when I do another workshop, what we call the structure of a foreign language classroom. When you begin with your overview, which is your performance objective, like today, we're going to learn, thank you. We're going to learn, but no, by the end of today's lesson, you will be able to do X, Y, Z, period. That's your objective. And you want to make sure that your objective is presenting one mode of communication, either presentational or interpretational or interpretive mode or interpersonal mode. Then there is what we call the prime stage in your structure of a classroom. The prime stage is when you present. I have an article on this and I can send it around to you too. There is a prime stage when you present the template, the model, you give them the model. And that prime stage determines whether you're going to succeed in your goal that day or not. Because the prime stage is when the student, that's the listening stage. Remember, listening comes before speaking. Your students must be able to understand before you start asking them to speak, right? Listening is the first skill that children, this is from natural method. So that prime stage is the stage where you are talking to your students, they are not saying anything. They are just absorbing what you are saying, and they're trying to figure out, because you're not using English, their brain is working overtime. They're really trying to add 1 + 1, what is she saying? Because when you take away the power of guessing by just giving them the English translation, then they're not going to be trying. So the prime stage is the second stage in the structure of a lesson plan. And that one will take as long as until you start seeing a smile on their face. Now they know what you are saying. They've gotten it. Then you will move to the practice and drill stage, which is it's now your turn. You've seen what I've done, now I want you to now make it yours. That was what he did when he started pairing them up in two. And he gave them a role play and a sheet of paper. Say, okay, I'm going to pair you. He first of all before he paired them up, he did the drill. That was because he wanted to be sure they can pronounce it. That's when you check, their pronunciation. That's where all your teaching, your methods, your techniques come, the practice drill stage. And that one also will go as long as the students allow. If they get it fast, it could be 5 minutes. But if they are slow to get it, maybe 10 minutes, because they've got to get it. Then towards the end of the practice drill stage is when you pair them up, and then you go around to be sure that they can now do it themselves. Remember, the practice drill stage is also the stage where error correction is going on. What method do you use in correcting their error? Do you use, just repeat? He repeated a lot. Repeating. When they hesitate, you will repeat. Repetition is so critical. So then, after the end of practice drill stage is stage 4, which is check. The check stage. So the stages are overview. There are so many articles that have been written on this. Overview, prime, practice, or drill, and then check. Check is the stage where now you tell your students, I've taught you, now I want you to come and do what I said you would do at the overview stage. And that's no teaching moment anymore. That's the time the role play was going on. So he wasn't teaching anymore. If there are mistakes at that stage, at least if it is a good class, if it is a successful lesson, at least 80% of your students should be able to do what you ask them to do. If, let's say, maybe 50% of them cannot do it, that means the lesson has failed. Not necessarily you. Lessons can fail. I still have lessons that fail because it depends on a lot of things. So that means I have to redo the lesson. I have to ask myself what went wrong. Did I not repeat well? What happened? Then I will reteach the lesson. But if you bear these in mind, you see, I taught this guy, I taught him all this. I mean, if you are from Madison, you have to know this. Because it's like we drill it in all our TAs, every day. No, overview, prime, straight. What did I do at the overview stage? What did I do at the prime stage? What did I do at the practice drill stage? If your prime is not successful, your check will fail. Because that means the student did not understand. They have to be able to perform based on understanding. And this is the stage you are teaching understanding. Here is when you are teaching doing. When they do it, when they say it or they write it, if you are teaching presentational in writing, this is when they start the writing. But here is when you give them the model. You are the one talking here. This is the longest time you can talk. Though it shouldn't even be long, it shouldn't be too long because you don't want to make it a teacher-centered class. But the prime stage is a time when it's like children now listening to all the input. This is where you give them the input for them to use here or even here. Here, this is their time. This is their show.
What he did in the prime stage was he had the dialogue on the board and then he played both roles.
Exactly.
With himself. And so he was talking to himself. Switch a little bit, switch a little bit, switch a little bit. Rehearse the dialogue for them multiple times with different objects, and then have them rehearse it by themselves, and then perform.
Exactly. Yeah. So that was the prime stage when he was doing playing the role play. Then when now he started practicing with them, he has moved to the third stage. Yes.
Prof, I don't know. Another way of putting it might be that before the painter paints, he has to prime the piece of iron, get it ready. If he doesn't do a good job at that, the painting will fail, or the checking will fail. It won't stay. The paint won't stay. You have to prime.
I think that was, and it's not really my term. You know, it was actually coined in 1982 by Connie Kinnock, was the first one that wrote an article on this. Connie Kinnock, a professor of language education at UW-Madison. And then I think in 2006 or so, Ben Rifkin in Slavic, in Russian studies, actually remodeled it, you know, but it was still saying the same thing. It's a very good structure if you all can, you know, if you're not familiar with it, if you can learn it. Because it helps you step by step. You know, as he was teaching, he knew what was going to come up. He had it in his brain. I'm going to do this, then move to this, move to this. So it's already etched in his memory. So it looks seamless, but he was moving from one stage to the other. Yeah. So, do you have anything that we could add to this? Or do you think this would be a good example, good model for us to use for those programs that do not have their own instrument?
I have a suggestion.
Yes, yes.
I wanted to come back to what Xiaojing said because I think she has a point. I think we could mention timing and pacing without the expectation that there would be 5 minutes for this, 5 minutes for this, 5 minutes for this, but somebody observing can still make a comment on pacing.
Okay.
You can say, for example, instructor took too long priming. Students looked a little bored.
It's true.
I
agree with
Instructor
that.
did not notice that students were already catching on and ready to move on. So there can be, you can say something either way. Instructor didn't take enough time, moved forward too quickly, or instructor took too long.
So how do you
The
phrase
lesson
that?
plan was too
How would you
ambitious
phrase?
for.
It has to be very open. It would be something like timing and pacing were appropriate. And it leaves some subjectivity, but I think it's something we can sense.
Actually, you know, you are right, because I have seen many lessons fail because they did not do prime enough.
Okay. But
The
it could fail
time
in
they
the other
spent on
direction.
it was so
Right.
short.
Right.
They just maybe repeated the dialogue and then they moved to practice.
Right.
And the students were not prepared. I think you're right.
And one more thing to add.
Okay.
Well, there might be other things, but I think we could make something about, and we could comment on an atmosphere of respect, which is also very subjective, and maybe it goes in with the affective filter, but was there a general atmosphere of respect? That's important. And I think, again, it's something we can feel.
Could you please elaborate that,
Well, by that I mean students. You asked. I think you have something here about students feel free to ask questions, but mutual respect. And let me see if I can think of an
Doesn't that go
example.
with affective domain? Because, you know, I think I know where you're going. For example, if a teacher cuts down the student, oh, bad answer, or that's wrong, you know, they freeze. So that would be under affective domain.
Something like that, and acknowledgement of encouragement or acknowledgement of good performance could also figure into respect.
So, that's very, very important that you mentioned that, because one of the rubric in my syllabus that I have is class participation. It kind of, but it comes more from the student side rather than the teacher and student both. But what you are pointing, the way I understand is like both, if student does errors or, regardless of correct answer, wrong answer, how the student response, and that goes from students' side also, like, are they approaching, asking, showing body language, or asking the instructor in a very respectful way? Is that what you meant?
Well, I'll give you an example. Yesterday in a class I was teaching, in an hour and 15 minutes, 5 different students got up at different times and left my class and wandered back in. Which was not okay with me, because it communicates to me, I don't think what you're saying is important enough. I mean, I'm bored. It's okay for me to get up. And finally, when the 5th one said, I said, I'm not pointing fingers at anybody in particular, but I've just noticed that in the last hour, 5 of you have gone up and come back in. Now, if you're sick and you need to go to the bathroom, by all means, please go. But can we all agree that we can all sit here for an hour and 15 minutes together and not get up, because it feels disrespectful to me, and I also think it's disrespectful to other students. It's distracting. So that's just an example.
So good relationship between teacher and student.
I think it's about facilitating a classroom atmosphere that. Creating a classroom atmosphere that facilitates learning.
Yes.
And then you can have a bigger, some subheadings under that.
Well, another heading that's related to it is management of the classroom. Is the teacher in control of the class?
Good classroom management?
Yes, good classroom management includes stating your expectations up front so the students don't walk out in and out of the class. And you don't have students talking in the corner, whispering and joking while the teacher is talking. So there's texting. There's a general, even if you're coming in and you've never observed a class before, you can tell a lot about how much a teacher is in control of his or her class by behaviors that are happening that a teacher has let go on, or you know what I'm saying?
Yes. Actually, I saw some modules that had classroom management. I think that would go under classroom management.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I'll add that.
But
on that I have a question. I mean, all of us are instructors here. I mean, like, for example, these kids, looking, oh, I've done this and I'm texting, I did my part, and so nothing to do. And say, well, there's still so much you can do actually. And then eating chewing gum. And I always have, I in the beginning of the course, I say, please don't do that, because that affects your ability to speak clearly, to pronounce, and so.
In your syllabus,
Yes.
do you put your expectations
Yes.
there? Because I always put in my syllabus, no eating, and you can't even come late. There are points, if you come late, that will take off from your class participation. And my students usually abide by it. And I've done this for 30 years.
They love points, so they love points.
That's
so
right.
That's how you can get them.
That's right. I tell them no eating, period. You make drink, because I don't want them to be dehydrated. But no eating, because I say you can't have food. You don't put food in your mouth and you are talking. You can't do that. And this is a talking class. This is a class where we're going to be talking.
But officially, I think all classrooms, they have a sign that you cannot bring anything in. Right? So
that's right.
I sometimes
So,
point at one of
yeah,
those things.
I think really, you see, your first day of class, my first day of my class is the most critical because that's where I lay the ground rules. Then, also that's when I tell them, no English, we are going to be using Yoruba all the time. I'm from, basically from day one, except, at least 90% of the time is going to be in the language. I think American students, if you make your expectations really clear, majority of them will follow it. I have so much respect for that, confidence that, in these students, because I've done it for 30 years and I really don't have a problem. Even though they will eat in other classes, but when they come to my class, they don't do it because I already make it clear. I spend like the whole day of first class, stating my expectations for the class. And then I ask them also for the expectations from me. So it's a kind of mutual relationship, you know, and I try not to violate their own, you know, I respect their own expectations. It gets to a stage where if I mistakenly switch to English, sometimes my students will correct me. No English. Really, I think it's a lot about setting the ground rules.
Yeah, the other thing I've tried is I've written several pages on how to interact in the communicative classroom. So I try to educate them on how to be learners of language also, which helps some of them, the ones that bother to read it thoroughly. I think it helps them a lot. And I do talk at various points. You know, if I'm having bad classroom behaviors, I stop and say, you know, look, this is very important that you pay attention to this segment for this, and this reason, because it's crucial to what happens later on. And I'm introducing new things that'll come up later. You want to be engaged. I mean, it's part of the process also.
You know, I think you just made a very important point. If I get what you're saying, when we teach languages, I notice that we're not only teaching them even just that language, we're teaching them how to learn.
Absolutely.
Period. How to learn.
I could not learn a language until I took teaching English as a second language course.
You see? It really helps them, you know, because I tell them I'm going to also teach you skills about just learning in general. So they end up, you know, many of them will end up even becoming good teachers because they are learning also even how the art of teaching. We just had a Star Talk for Swahili instructors, and we have volunteer students that we brought in to be the students for the participants, instructors to practice their teaching on. One of them happened to be teaching Spanish somewhere. In her evaluation of the course, she said, "You may think I was only learning Swahili. I learned so much about how I'm going to be teaching my Spanish through this class." She was also absorbing all the methods that we were using, and also the know-how. So it's language teaching is amazing. I mean, I really, really, you know, love it, and especially, you know, like you were saying about having respect. You know, what they do is whether out of disrespect for you as a teacher, also even for themselves. Because in life, they have to learn to respect other people. When they have a job, they can't just stroll in and out anyhow, or, you know, so they can learn all that even in your classroom. Yeah. Yes.
I even feel like with the freshmen, we teach them how to be responsible adults in the first week. That's number one. What are their responsibilities? And then, structure of language in general. English language plus the foreign language. So much goes into that. And plus, because of our small classes, we often end up being counselors to these kids because we have very close interaction on a daily basis. So much goes into that.
I know, you're right. And so there was one lady who came to one of our workshops. All her life, she has been teaching anthropology. Now she just got a job to teach Swahili. And then when she was at the workshop, she said, "I have learned so much about my students in these 2 weeks than I ever learned with all my anthropology students." Because she got to know about their family, what they like to eat, what they like to do. I mean, for me, language classes is really building a community, you know, and it's a community that goes on even long time after the class is over. Long time, you know. I was coming from Madison yesterday, and I was at a gas station. This lady just came out of a car. I wanted to get gas. And then she started talking, "Oh, we're coming from Florida. We've been, you know, traveling almost 1,500 miles. And my dad is, I think, getting tired." She just started talking to me. She didn't know me from Adam. And then I said, "Oh, and where is your destination?" He said, "Oh, Chicago." And we were at Crawfordsville. I said, "Oh no, you still have 4 more hours to go." And then this lady, out of nowhere, spoke Yoruba to me. Said, "Báwo ni," which is "how are you" in Yoruba. I freaked out. Then I'm kind of, what? And she said, "This is what I can remember. I studied Yoruba. When I heard your accent, are you from Nigeria?" I said, "Yeah." "Are you Yoruba?" I said, "Yeah." Said, "I learned Yoruba." And it was like years ago. But she still remembered how to say Howard. And funny enough, when she mentioned her teacher's name, I was the one who helped them to start their Yoruba program. And the scholars, I know her. She was like, wow. She got my picture, she took my picture, she took my evidence, she put my picture on her cellular phone. I mean, look at the community that had been built with her learning that language. So, you are right. With less commonly taught languages, especially, my goodness, you build an everlasting relationship. Because we're small, very close. So you be the mother, the sister, like everything. Sometimes they even marry one another,
So we have those two C's, community and connection.
That's right. Community, yes. Yeah. So these are good. So I have 3. Timing and pacing were appropriate. Then I have classroom management. I think I have to do good classroom management. Yeah, good classroom management. Okay.
Antonia,
So,
I'm interested in myself in adding something, but I'm not sure yet. From my own interest is how well you integrate technology in your classroom. And
that's good.
Yeah, so I may in future develop something like an observation sheet for integration technology and whether it really enhances your teaching. And related to that 4 steps, I can divert a little bit to another topic, which is flipped classroom, because I've been working with faculty members on how to flip their classroom. So one idea I have is to take a model class that we just see and see how we can flip that classroom. For example, a part of the priming can definitely be done before the classroom by recording the lesson and then continue the priming in the beginning of the class. And by doing that, we can also do just-in-time teaching to check students' understanding of the priming stage. And so in your classroom, you can actually focus on the problems that students have in their understanding for the priming stage.
So I actually said to add good integration of technology.
Yeah, that's just very abstract. I don't have a particular thing on it.
But I think it's good because there had been people that use technology to even mess up the class.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
I would make that use of technology not good, because you don't always have to use technology, right? As a technology person.
That's true.
So maybe
That's true. Because even if you just use chalk and, because like he didn't even use technology.
No, he didn't. I mean, it could be technology if used appropriately.
Yeah.
Or something like that.
that's what I mean, yes.
Okay. Yeah, say that again.
Technology, if used, technology is, if used, is used appropriately.
Okay. Yes, that's good.
Or maybe instead of technology, it's more about media, because media can be pictures, can be videos, can be audios.
Yeah, like a short video of authentic Nigerian market, 2
Yeah,
seconds.
exactly.
Yeah.
For example, I was thinking about the priming stage. If in the class, the instructor himself can only pretend to be on 2 sides. But if he records the lesson beforehand, he can have another Yoruba teacher, maybe another gender even, and having a real dialogue. They can even set it up with a background.
We did that.
Yeah.
In the Yoruba class.
Yeah, and actually you can do that in ourselves, in our recording room. Yeah.
It's true. this is good. So I'll add the suggestions that we got from here, and then I will resend it to all of you to see if you think it's something that we could keep on file, so that if people need it, they want to use it, it will be available for them to use. Any other questions? So basically, I think, let's see, where do I go back to my... So we already finished this part because it's a presentation of observation instrument drafts. So I'll like I said, I will, work on this draft again, and then the next thing is if you have any questions. PBK, you didn't say anything. You're just absorbing everything. If you have any other questions that you think we could address, please feel free to let me know.
I have maybe more thoughts of Mr. Chrissy. So when there is an activity like this, the one that we saw, do we keep a rubric, guideline to assess students' performance, though it's interpersonal, So do we, because that would be, let's say, how well students are using the vocab or the structure, or how well they are interacting. Because students, when we grade them, when we assess them, like my students in particular, they want to have rubric. So we want to know what the rubric is, what we are being assessed for.
Yeah. I think that would be going into assessment of learning. That would be something that would go into assessment of learning, which could be basically, I think the key for this lesson, this kind of lesson that we just saw, is that the best way of assessing learning outcome is, did they do what you said they're going to do? Then they may also want to ask, how well did they do it? If they do it, and there's a lot of grammatical errors and all kinds of problems, they're not, applying the right culture, then that will still be a problem. That means if they didn't do it well, then that means they still haven't done it. So I think basically what you assess has to mesh, right with your objective, your performance objective. Then I think the issue of accuracy, if you want to then look into, different aspects of the assessment, the accuracy level. But if you just want them to be able to haggle, or just say, to be able to greet one another, and you're able to do it, it's not every mistake that you penalize a language student for, because native speakers make mistakes also. So I think you have to be doing assessments every day, every lesson you have to, and that's the check stage actually. Really, the check stage is the how many of you are familiar with backward curriculum design? Fantastic. Okay, if you put this in backward curriculum design, this one is stage 1, which is your goals for teaching. Actually, this is stage 2 of backward curriculum design. Stage 2 assessment, because basically when you are at this stage, you are telling your students, watch me, what I'm doing is what I'm going to expect from you. This is what I'm going to measure you by. This is my rubric, my assessment rubric. That's stage 2 of backward curriculum design. So you are giving them the model that you are going to measure them by. So now, then stage 3 is the how. How do they get there? What are the hows, how to do it? How can they do what you just showed them? That's what. Then here is where you sit down. This is actually now evaluating you. This is now you're going to find out whether you succeeded as a teacher or not. If what they do here doesn't match the assessment rubric that you've given them, then there's something wrong. Then as a self-reflective teacher, you have to ask yourself, what went wrong? You should be able to figure it out. Was my rubric not clear? Did I not, make it very clear? Or what happened? Or maybe I didn't repeat enough. Maybe the practice. I've seen many lessons fail also at this stage because they didn't repeat enough. Especially native speakers. When we native speakers are teaching a language, we think we repeat too much. No, you don't repeat too much for foreign languages. They want to hear it over and over until they are ready to jump in, and start, talking. Until they are ready to jump in, it's because they are still struggling. They are still trying to figure it, They will give you a clue to move from this state to there if you are paying attention. They will be ready, to start chiming in as soon as they've gotten it. So assessment is very critical. So I take backward curriculum design. This is the stage 3. How? Stage 3. I take backward curriculum design, which is for like the whole curriculum, then I break it down into a lesson plan. You can bring it down to a lesson plan. Just as you can use backward curriculum design for a university curriculum development, a department curricula, a program curriculum, a language curriculum, you can also use it for a lesson plan. And this is the structure of a lesson plan. How you can use it. That's another thing I think we will do a workshop on. Backward curriculum design is amazing. One workshop, somebody said, this backward curriculum design, you can even use it for anything in life. I can use it to find a husband. I said that was a good one. I never. So I think it's really an amazing tool, an amazing curriculum design approach. I mean, knowing where you're going before you start, who can argue against that? But we all do it. We start teaching without telling our students where we're taking them to, even though we know that you can just take off from one city to the other, not knowing where you're going. So it says, tell them where you are taking them to. Stage 1, what is your goal? What is your objective? Then tell them what they will do for you to show you that they have achieved the objective. That's the prime. Show them what they will do for you. What is the assessment rubric? What is the evidence of learning? Show them what they will produce for you that will let them know that they have achieved. That's what stage 2 of backward curriculum is doing. Is saying. And in lesson plan structure, that's what prime is doing. And then now you move to, okay, what materials do they need? What kind of methodology do you need? What techniques? This is where all those, all your skills as a teacher now will come into place. And your practice and error correction, all that come here. How? And then they do it for you. So there's so much to learn. We can't teach everything in one day.